My first guest is a former middle school principal and now the elect for New York's 16th Congressional District. Let's welcome to Cocktails and Convo, Dr. Jamaal Bowman. Congressman Dr. Jamaal Bowman, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Of course, brother. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Excited. Like I'm feeling so good. You got that momentum behind you. Before we get into our dialogue, we're going to just toast. I have a Brown Hornet with me. We're going to do a virtual toast. Just a virtual toast to...
I have a macchiato.
Macchiato. That works. A virtual toast to Black excellence, your recent triumph, to the future, legacy, and the hope that our children just end up better than us.
Absolutely. That's the number one toast right there, brother.
Absolutely. So how you feeling? You're just coming off this big win. You got the momentum behind you. What is Dr. Jamaal Bowman feeling right now?
Feeling a great sense of humility, a sense of excitement, a sense of good fortune, being in this position in this moment. We've been in the education wars for a long time, myself,
Absolutely.
20 years. I think you about the same. And, we've been through the trials and tribulations of that. And to take everything I learned in that space and pivot toward a campaign for Congress and to come out victorious, with the margin that we had. I mean, we won by 15 points. This was not a squeaker. It's because the community believed in what we were all about. And, we tripled voter turnout. So that was incredible. And man, so a sense of humility and excitement and looking forward to the next chapter, getting right to work.
Ground game was working hard. I got to go. The night of your election, Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC called you, and I quote, the new big star of New York politics. You're inspiring so many people right now, including myself. The new big star of New York politics. What does that mean to you?
I don't know, man. I don't get caught up in all that. You know what I'm saying? I'm not really trying to be a star. We don't do this for Twitter likes. We do it for the mission. We do it for the movement. But again, to be acknowledged, to be recognized is humbling. Absolutely. And we won, and it was a huge win. Prior to the win, prior to the election, many people started, comparing me to AOC. Is he the new AOC? And I would tell them, like, listen, until we win, you can't make that comparison because she won. She didn't just run a good race. Right. She actually won.
But definitely a great comparison.
Say it again?
Definitely a great comparison.
Good comparison, man. Now that we've won, it's a more accurate comparison. But it's about getting to work and building with the grassroots, building with people like yourself. This is a grassroots movement. It's a quote unquote bottom up movement. And as long as we stay focused on the mission in that way, we're gonna be all right.
In that same interview that night, there's a clip and we're gonna play it for people to see.
When you work with children who come from, troubling backgrounds, who suffer through poverty and trauma, you realize the impact of bad policy on the lives of kids who are most vulnerable. And as an educator, all of those issues intersect at your doorstep. Children can't thrive in school when they're dealing with food and housing insecurity, criminal justice entanglements, and lack of opportunity. So it was those experiences, as well as an absent congressman, that led to me running this race.
You talked about education and how, as a middle school principal, some of the challenges that you dealt with as a middle school principal. Can you just expand a little more on that?
Yeah, man. Not just as a middle school principal, but as a teacher and as a school counselor. So many challenges over the course of a 20-year career. And, in the role of the principal, I mean, you have, children coming into your office telling you that their father was murdered over the weekend. You have teachers running into your office telling you that a child is self-mutilating in the bathroom. You have parents calling you, informing you that their child didn't come home last night. Can you help them? And everything in between from teachers who are not who need a lot of support, to families who have recently lost their homes, to lending money to families who are dealing with food insecurity. I mean, it's just so much that we deal with. All of the quote unquote problems of society intersect at an educator's doorstep.
Absolutely.
You know, whether it's a principal or teacher or what have you. So there's a certain level of empathy and compassion that I hope to bring to my new role in Congress. It's something that people could really relate to throughout the campaign, and helped us to build quality, authentic, deep relationships. And yeah, man, you know what it is. It's day in and day out. You know,
Absolutely.
Teachers and educators make miracles in our schools every single day, and people don't realize it. Our schools are underfunded, they're under-resourced, and despite that, we make miracles as educators. So if I can uplift the profession, you know, in this run for office and now as a member of Congress, then that's a beautiful thing.
Special shout out to all the teachers, school leaders, superintendents, everybody who's on that ground floor putting in work to make a difference in the lives of children. You matter. You absolutely matter. So, you know, of course, across the nation right now, there's so much talk around defunding the police and police reform. So from your perspective, granted, there's work that has to be done as a country, you know, as a city, as a state, and there's different levels to that work. Where should we begin and what should we be doing?
That's a huge question. He said, where should we begin? So, first of all, we have to have a historical context and perspective here, right? So we released something called a Reconstruction Agenda, which is our call to action for truth and reconciliation as a nation, similar to Germany, similar to Rwanda, similar to South Africa. And what that's all about is reckoning with our history as a country, reckoning with the legacy of slavery and institutional racism that still exists, not just in terms of mass incarceration and police brutality, but within our schools and how schools are funded, within our communities and the lack of resources there, within healthcare systems, within, you know, when you look at economic inequality, when you look at immigration reform, there's a legacy of racism that lives in America's DNA.
Absolutely.
So we need to reconcile with that history, and we need to reckon with that history and acknowledge it and own it. If we do that, then we're able to move on. In addition, we need massive investment, massive financial investment in our communities. And what we're calling for is reparations. Mm-hmm. And reparations, not just in the form of money in our pockets, but in terms of access to universal health care.
Absolutely.
In terms of housing and building wealth through housing, in terms of fully investing in minority and Black-owned and women-owned businesses, investing in our public schools, dealing with environmental racism.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need massive support, and I do support defunding the police. What I'm talking about is a reallocation of resources away from an institution that continues to brutalize communities. But even more importantly, when you look at the day-to-day work of a police officer, only about 5% of that work is focused on real severe heinous crime like rape, murder, and assault, aggravated assault. When you look at the other 95%, much of it is administrative or low-level issues that can be handled by a non-emergency police force. So this is about reimagining public health through a holistic lens. Again, a lens that educators understand quite well. Children can't thrive in school and in life when they're dealing with insecurity in all other aspects of their lives. And that's where we need to start, with true safety and security and well-being of those who are most vulnerable, and rethinking all of our institutions in a way that centers our common humanity.
Absolutely. And you hit it right on the head. That reimagining piece is so huge. And now is the perfect time for us to really begin to unravel current systems and structures that we have in place and really reimagine what they could look like. We can do things differently. And with people like you in office, we can absolutely work hard supporting you to make that happen. We're going to be right back with some more Congressman Dr. Jamaal Bowman and the People Want to Know segment. So welcome back to Cocktails and Convo. We will now have the People Want to Know segment, which of course, that's just when we just take questions from people all over and do our best to answer those questions. Congressman Bowman, you're going to help me out with these questions. We have Justin from Brooklyn. He wants to know, why have the cops who killed Breonna Taylor still not been arrested?
Because institutional racism continues to live in our police departments. And police unions across the country are very powerful politically. And quite often, our mayors, our governors, our elected officials don't want to do anything to cross these police departments. So, they claim things like due process, and they claim, that they're transparent as a police force. But the reality is, politically, it looks hard. They don't want to challenge our police departments and our police unions. Also, in terms of policy, there's something at the federal level called qualified immunity, which allows police pretty much to get away with crimes and violate someone's civil rights without being held accountable. And that's why we're calling for, and many Democrats in Congress are calling for, ending qualified immunity. Because if we do that, then we can hold police accountable in a much more swift and efficient way, as well as independent investigations from the Department of Justice and the FBI whenever cops commit a crime. So,
absolutely,
unfortunately, accountability this is where we are, but that's why we're fighting to change it. Yep. Say it again.
Justin, you heard it. Accountability is key. So we're going to move on. We have a question from Debbie from Staten Island. Okay, interesting question. Debbie wants to know, do you fold the toilet paper or do you ball it up before you use it?
Say it again.
Do you fold the toilet paper or do you ball it up before you use it? That's Debbie's question.
Oh my goodness. Fold it. I fold it before I use it.
I think folding it is the key, because if you were balling it up, you might have a real problem on your hands. Literally. Might have a problem on your hands. So you heard it? Hey,
literally,
Debbie
yes.
From Staten Island.
I folded up, Debbie.
Fold it up, Debbie. Our last question for the people want to know. Paula from the Bronx wants to know, what do you expect from the next New York City mayor?
So, that's a great question. I would expect the New York City mayor, and I would hope the New York City mayor would work in partnership with the public advocate and with community-based organizations to meet the needs of the people of the city of New York. Not just in terms of public health and public safety, but in terms of our education system, our school boards that are now community education councils, our healthcare system as well. And I would expect I would hope the new mayor would apply much more pressure on our governor and on our federal government to bring the proper resources to New York City that our kids and our families deserve.
Absolutely.
That's what I would hope. Unfortunately, throughout much of my life, the mayor has been more of a manager and not as much of a leader as we need them to be. So I would hope that the new mayor would be a collaborative leader working with others to bring the resources to bear for our city.
Absolutely. And I'll cheers to that. We need a leader.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that, Debbie. Get out there and vote. You heard it. We're looking for a leader, but your vote counts. So, Of course, we got to touch on it. We recently lost a political giant, an equity warrior in Congress whose work still speaks volumes, right? For a decade, his commitment to equal rights is just so inspiring, and many people will work 2-3 lifetimes to try to fill his shoes. As a congressman, and we talk about the next generations of people, it's almost like this metaphoric of passing the baton on to people like you, people like AOC, people who are really out there hungry, and speaking truth to power. What does that mean to you?
It's so, the gravity of what you're saying is just so overwhelming. I can't even accept that comparison. Like I don't feel worthy of it. T. Vivian, I mean, these are giants of the civil rights movement and giants of the Black experience in this country. I mean, John Lewis was arrested over 40 times as a peaceful protester.
Right.
He was beaten multiple times, had his skull fractured, had a concussion, literally wore those bruises into Congress after he won his congressional seat. He served on the local level first and then won a congressional seat. And he was known as the conscience of Congress.
Right.
Because whenever people came with the BS, you know, his voice and where he stood on the matter brought a moral gravity and clarity to whatever the policy or the issue was. So not only, you know, you mentioned we stand on his shoulders, and we do, but to have him pass away on the same day that, you know, we were declared the victor is eerie and just, you know, just weird. But also on election night, you know, during my victory speech, I mentioned going to Congress and causing problems. And the quote most attributed to John Lewis is, you know, causing going to Congress, and not just in Congress, but all throughout the country, you know, causing good trouble. Absolutely. You know, he always talked about causing good trouble. So if I could be half the representative he was, I'll be happy with my career. But that's the mission, man. The mission is good trouble, particularly in this moment. You know, we've read about the civil rights movement. We've read about other movements throughout history, but now we are here. We are in the middle of a movement, and we have a responsibility as Black people in this country, as people in this country. You have a responsibility, but you have even more so of a responsibility if you're a person of color, in my opinion. So, yeah, man, it's very humbling for that comparison.
Well, you know what? I know you're up for the task, and you're going to do great work. You know, it's interesting. You talked about blood. We talk about that phrase, blood, sweat, and tears. John Lewis gave blood, sweat, and tears for our people. And we owe him. You know, we owe him to continue this fight and keep doing whatever we can on behalf of people of color to continue to close the gap. And there's so many gaps that we need to close, but closing them all. Doing whatever we can to close every one of those gaps. Opportunity gap, wealth gap, achievement gap. Whatever gap you name, we can close it as long as we continue to focus on people and support people who are about doing the good work like yourself.
Absolutely.
So also, yes, you know it right now, father. Absolutely, father. I'm a father, and we're doing our best to educate our children remotely. What would you suggest as the plan for reopening schools in the fall?
So we need to test every child 3 times before we even think about opening schools. In addition to that, we need to make sure our schools are thoroughly cleaned, have exemplary ventilation, and we use alternative learning spaces beyond the school, because as you know, we cannot have 20 kids or 30 kids in the classroom. And I really would rather not have kids go to school 1 or 2 days a week or 1 week on, including I'll only happen if the full resources of the federal government are brought to bear. And right now, that's not the case. And Donald Trump has fumbled the response to this pandemic from the very beginning. And as a result, we're still struggling across the country. New York is in a better place than many other states because we've actually flattened the curve. And we have a limited number of cases on a day-to-day basis. But still, we're not ready to open.
No, we're not. And the reality is,
we need to hire more teachers. There's just so much more that needs to be done. Say it again?
No, and just the reality is, whatever the final plan ends up being, there's going to be people on both sides who are not pleased with whatever that outcome is.
Yeah, there's no perfect solution to this, and there's no easy solution. But if we do a better job with testing, contact tracing, getting the results back quickly, cleaning our schools, ventilation, lowering class size. If we do all those things and we have the resources to do it, we're in a much better place than not doing those things. And right now, the Trump administration, the Republicans in the Senate don't seem to be ready, willing, and able to do those things, which is what's most scary. And then on the other side, for the people who aren't able to return to work, there's no plan in place to get them the financial resources, like continuing unemployment insurance at $600 per month. That's being debated right now. That may drop to about $200. And people can't survive with what's coming from the federal government. So we're in a tough place.
A lot of kinks we need to work out. Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of kinks. And the big thing is everyone needs to be at the table working it out. And right now, it's not that level of collaboration.
Congressman Dr. Jamaal Bowman, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join us on Cocktails and Convo. Whenever you need me, I'm just a text or a phone call away. I salute you. Continue being great.
Thank you, brother. I want to say one more thing.
Please.
We need everyone to fill out their census. Please complete your census. This accounting is important. We're talking tens of millions of dollars in resources to your community. Fill out your census, everyone, brothers and sisters. We need you to do this. This is essential.
You heard it from Congressman Dr. Jamaal Bowman. Complete that sentence. Complete the census. It only takes about 10, 12 minutes to complete. Fill that out. Get it in. Thank you, sir.
Peace and love, everyone.
Be well.
Thank you.
Cheers.
All right. Peace.